Awesome. Cool. I have so many cups on my desk that I keep hitting, and so I'm going to stop doing that. So let's start off with some introductions. Let's go with your name, your focus in industry, and what made you decide to choose the career path that you did.
So my name's Karina. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a writer, director, producer. I work in advertising, commercials, but I also do documentaries and independent films as well. I started out I basically got into a media tech class when I was in high school, and that kind of planted the seed, which led me to pursue this as a career. Um, as a daughter of immigrants, that was not necessarily the path that my parents were thinking for me, but right after school, I got a job working for the local CW affiliate in Dallas Fort Worth. And that kind of reassured my parents that this was a viable career path. From there, I worked for the Dallas Cowboys for a bit and then moved to New York City, where I spent a good 6 years working on documentaries and TV shows for channels like National Geographic Wild and the Discovery Channel, filming wild boars in Germany and moose up in Canada, avalanches in Alaska, and hippos in Colombia. After having all of those wild adventures, I moved to Portland, Oregon, and that's been my home for a while now, and I love it here. I love the creative energy in the city, and since I've been here, I've worked on documentary features and narrative feature films as well, but my bread and butter is commercial and advertising, because that's a lot of the work here as well. But yeah, I'm really happy to be here and to share as much wisdom as I can with y'all. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. Adolfo.
Hi everyone, my name is Adolfo Alejandro CANTU-VILLAREAL, which you get bonus points if you can pronounce it right like that. But to most Americans, just Adolfo is fine. I won't take it against you. I was born and raised in Monterrey in Mexico. I moved to the US when I was 17 with my mom and my brother. I always loved cinema, and I tell people I watch a lot of foreign films, which foreign films to me were American films. So it's both something that I would do with my mom, my dad, and by myself. And as a kid, I was interested in many topics, but I couldn't say, I want to dedicate my life to this one topic. And through filmmaking, I realized that I could dedicate myself 6 months to one topic and get to meet the most amazing minds related to that topic. And then for the next 6 months, do a different topic. And to me, that was so cool and so amazing that I could get to collaborate with people and tell stories. Now, to do that as an immigrant in this country is close to impossible. As an immigrant, even though I could speak, English is not my first language, but I could speak it. I had the grades to go to a good film school. Immigrants don't have access to that, don't have scholarships. Most of us didn't have money when we arrived to this country. So you can quit or you can figure it out. And that's a big thing in filmmaking, problem solving. So what I did is I went to my local community college and made my own film school without any film aspects. I studied creative writing, film photography, and philosophy. And so by picking and choosing, I was able to kind of immerse myself in the world that I wanted to be a part of. I also found the books that, I wanted to learn, from UT Austin and NYU, and said, if I can go there, I'll bring, what they're learning to me. And to start a career like that, it's very difficult. It's like most industries is who you know, your connections, your money. If you don't have any of that, it's going to be a struggle. But again, as an immigrant, that's part of life. It's embracing a challenge. It's part of who you are. So starting with the smallest projects, first doing photography and then moving into video and learning as I went, it's really important. And I think for this career is something that you never stop learning. You can always polish your skills. You can always do better. You can always connect with other similar-minded professionals, which I've been lucky to work with some of them here, like Karina. And since then, I started my career in Dallas, started growing, started a company with my producer, Maribel de Leon. And I've been in Portland now for 3 years. So it's been a really cool place to get to know people. I think the film community here is a special community. It's a lot of people that have similar intentions, and we're pushing in the same direction, which makes it a very interesting environment.
Thank you.
It's me, right? Hi, I'm Lily Joynes, and I am the communications manager for the Oregon Media Production Association, or OMPA. So that's part of why I'm here today. But I will also talk a little bit about, I guess, my career path. I am a writer, I would say, as my creative field. I moved to Portland from Pennsylvania 3 years ago, and I would say in one word, politics. I moved here in 2017, if that helps place it. So I kind of similar to Adolfo, I feel like with school, like I first went to Emerson College in Boston, which is like this really like uppity art school, because I thought I had to do something like out of state and like really elite and just like super cool. And then I hated it. I cried like all the time. It was like overly competitive in like an arbitrary way, I guess. And then when I transferred to the University of Pittsburgh, which I initially thought I was way too good for in high school because it was too close to home and it was in state and all this. And then I put together, my major was communication and rhetoric. And then I did certificates in public and professional writing and gender, sexuality, and women's studies. So I've basically been trying to be a writer and publishing things since I was like 15, just doing it as much as possible and doing internships, doing fellowships, and also then expanding out my skills into like, well, okay, my first job out of college was at a newspaper, and with 6 months, I was hired part-time, promoted to full-time, and then every single person in the production department got laid off, and it was outsourced to another state. So I was like, well, obviously I need to do something different. So I got really into marketing and digital marketing, and I highly recommend HubSpot. They do free online certificates, a lot of marketing ones, and there's some design as well. Getting Google Analytics, like just constantly learning and trying to have more skills. And for me, it was kind of like spanning out the production process, like being able to do the design and the writing. So yeah, I guess I will keep it short because I'm not a filmmaker, but I think there are some similar themes here in terms of, you know, being, chasing something you're really passionate about, you know, like piecing it together for yourself and surrounding yourself with other people you admire and enjoy working with.
Super.
Awesome. Hello, everybody. My name is Ashley Mellinger. So sorry I was a little bit late. Of course, Zoom just decided to take a crap right before this panel, but I'm here. And man, I love this question. So I am an actor and a producer in town. I also do a fair bit of writing, and I am the co-founder of Desert Island Studios, which is an independent film studio in North Portland that was designed to provide affordability and accessibility to film resources to independent filmmakers and those from the arts community who have limited access, which, you know, they tend to be marginalized folks, and of course film can be prohibitively expensive. And so we try to provide an option that people can use and that works, that isn't, you know, one of the super expensive like sound stages that we have here in town, which are wonderful, but, you know, not everybody can have access to them. So quickly about my history in this profession. I think my first memory of getting into the arts was when I was very, very young. I saw a performance of The Nutcracker on ice. And according to my parents, I was so thrilled with the performance and so transported that, you know, I would just like not stop talking about it afterwards. And so from there, I ended up getting into theater. And so my background is as an actor. Now, I am also the daughter of an immigrant from South Korea, and I'm a military brat. So we moved around a lot. There was a lot of adapting to new spaces, to new places. And eventually, you know, it came time for me to further my education or make that choice to do so. And I was the first person in my family to go to college. I didn't know I wanted to go to college. I kind of thought I didn't want to go to college. So I only applied to one school, which was NYU. And I got in on scholarship. So I went there and I studied acting for 3 years. I got out early because I didn't really like school that much. And no offense to all the educational institutions out there, they're great. I wasn't very good at it. And then after that, I was working in New York City for almost a decade before moving here and opening the studio. I think, speaking to film specifically, the moment that really got me down this career path was when I was in high school. And I was a bookworm and a total nerd, and I didn't have any friends, and I used to go to the library all the time, and the librarians knew me by name, and they let me rent R-rated movies, even though I was a teenager, because they liked me so much. And so the very first movie that I ever saw was Boys Don't Cry, and it just blew my mind. I had no idea that a film could do something like that, could really like have such a powerful message and have such powerful performances and be so beautifully shot. And it just really opened my eyes to what a powerful medium film is. And so from there, you know, things just kind of built upon themselves. And, you know, now I work primarily as a freelance contractor. And I mean, I do a bunch of things. I work as a producer for hire, an actor for hire, a writer for hire. And that's it. I had no idea that I would be making a living doing this, but here we are.
Awesome. Super, super cool. Yeah, thanks. So I'm picking up kind of a common thread here. I guess could you all speak a bit to the value of, you know, networking, knowing people, kind of making those connections, and, you know, talk about that in contrast with, I guess, how going to a big film school is touted as the thing you must do in order to break into the industry, and kind of, you know, realities that you encounter with that. I guess if it's cool, we can start with Ashley and go in reverse order.
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, NYU, I don't knock it too much because I got a great education there. There are amazing professors at that school, and it is well known. And the Tisch Film School is touted as a great program for a reason. However, you know, a lot of educational institutions, and I'll just speak about NYU specifically, I think they don't really place a lot of value on networking, in part because the focus is all on the education portion, right? Like you need to be focusing on learning your craft, on building the tools that you're going to use in your career. And so networking is just not a primary focus, or wasn't for me anyway, when I was at university. The number one thing I can say about networking is there isn't really a playbook out there that's like, step one, send an email to this person that will open the door to, you know, all of the creative opportunities that you're going to have. What you have to do is you have to understand that, you know, no artist functions like an island, especially not in this medium. This is a very collaborative medium. You are going to work with tons of other people at any given moment. You cannot make a film by yourself, or if you do, I mean, I hesitate to say that it would be very good. So I think it's important to reach out to your peers, people who are interested in doing this, you know, get together, make films. I've seen some of the stuff that's come out of PSU for the student films, and like that is really the beginning of networking, because these are the people that you're going to come up with and that you're going to grow up with and learn with. And, you know, I mean, be bold too. If you see somebody in town whose work you like, you know, if you see Karina's stuff and you're like, Karina's so cool, I'm going to put you on blast, Karina. Just reach out to her, you know, or follow her on Instagram, see who she's hanging out with. Like, see, social media is a great way of getting to know who's out there, who's in the community, and like who you want to work with. Be bold, you know, put your name out there, say, I want to get involved. I'm willing to volunteer some time. I'm willing to, you know, put in some time to learn. And that just that very small action, I promise you, can get things moving in a big way going forward. Check.
I think I'm backwards in order, right? Yeah. There's so many things I want to say, but also I wanted you students to have the perspective that I graduated in 2015. I told Maddie, who's currently interning with OMPA, that I love talking to students. So I feel very, very new to this. So just wanted you guys to know that's where I'm coming from. So I feel like networking before graduating college was basically just people I came in contact with, like through those internships and stuff. I didn't really like make an effort to do it. And then when I moved here to Portland, I got like really good at finding out, like if I wanted to work somewhere, I would see if they were like having an event, and then I would just show up at that event. So yeah, putting yourself around, again, like around the people that you want to work with or be with. And sometimes I attended those events and I was like, oh wow, I don't want to work with this person or this company. And then I just think it's important to have professional friends who have similar professions to you. Like if they aren't your regular circle of best friends, like aren't doing what you do, make sure you have some people in your network who are. I just think it's super valuable. Even if you guys aren't like best friends, it's important to have professional friends in your network.
So yeah, I mean, continuing what everyone's saying, I think networking is key, but I think you should also pay attention on how you do it. Networking can be used to get work. So being strategic, okay, who do I need to talk to so that I get hired to do what I want to do? If you want to be creative, who are the people that I should reach out and say hello to start building those relationships? And I think networking, it's important to also see it as a way to bring diverse voices to your creative teams. I mean, if you care to tell a story where there's going to be diverse people in front of the camera, but you look behind the camera and there's zero diversity, then that's where you can network too and bring talented people that could make what you're doing more authentic. And I think that's important. I mean, just to give you an example related to that, I was DPing a commercial that was being shot in English and in Spanish. We shot the English part, then the Spanish part was coming, and the talent started saying lines in what she thought was Spanish, but wasn't. She could not speak Spanish. She was pretty much Google translating, reading badly. And there was not a Spanish speaking person other than me who was the DP. So I became the coach for that Spanish session. But it's those things that maybe in the planning they would have said, oh, no one in our team speaks this language, maybe we should reach out. Networking is part of that. Is if you want to be more authentic, if you want to reflect the community we live in, that's networking too. It's not just who can do me a favor kind of thing.
Oh, lots to say. But lots of good stuff's already been mentioned. I think, yeah, just to kind of go off of what Adolfo was talking about, I know it was mentioned, you kind of, you have your community of filmmakers in your school that you've worked with, and there is this kind of thing that happens where that group will go on to do something else together and go on to do something else together. And a lot of times, what I've witnessed in the past is that group tends to be the people that can afford to do work for no money. And so it's important to look at that group and make sure that it's reflecting some diversity in there. And oftentimes that means there needs to be some more financial support for your projects. But that's an aspect just to keep in mind as you're, networking within your, skill and as you're kind of growing on your projects. But for reaching out for people, I really think you should be doing that now. I think that, in my mind, it's about doing the research to find those people that you really like their work. And, it's really great. I mean, this is one thing that's really awesome about the pandemic is everybody is at home and online. So you don't have to just keep it to Portland. You could reach out to somebody that's in a different city. I think the best thing to do, as far as I've had people cold email me that have become my best friends and that's true fact. because we went and got a coffee together and then just, you know, got to know each other and realized like, oh, wow, they do awesome work too. I really like what they're doing. And I think it's just about that first email, you know, really making it something that shows that you're looking at their work and that you appreciate what they're doing and that you're connecting to it on a deeper level. And then I think asking a couple of questions, saying a little bit about yourself and keeping it short and sweet, and just seeing if there's a way to like kind of push it into that. Can we grab a coffee? Can we do like a digital Zoom? I think that that's a really important step towards networking. Yeah, networking is unfortunately like, I mean, that's a huge part of how I get my work in this industry is just by word of mouth. And you know, I find that when I want to change where my career is going, I need to change who I'm networking with. So just, you know, something to think about as you're kind of like developing these relationships. And it is a relationship that you're developing over time. You know, I've had multiple projects or multiple jobs where I started out with just like an initial email with them. They didn't really have any work for me, but then I checked in with them, you know, a couple months later and was just like, hey, I just want to let you know, I just finished up this like music video. Like, how's everything going with you? And they were like, good, I'm slammed. Can you, are you available? Can I hire you? And so like, that's something that really happens like a lot of times in this industry, this like ease of like somebody reaching out to you and you're like, wait a second, I need to hire somebody. I know that that's coming up and this person just contacted me. My job just got way easier. And so that's a good reason to just like keep up that relationship. Just, you know, I think give people time to get back to you. If you don't hear in a few weeks, like it's okay, like maybe follow up again, and then, you know, let it go if they don't respond after that. But I've had a lot of really good responses with cold emails. I think another thing that really helps is, you know, it sounds like y'all have some work that you've done, having a website or a portfolio or just something that they can see, like, what are you doing? You know, they could check out and see like, where are you at? And I think maybe even just like saying, you know, if you're looking to be a DP and you're like networking, and you're like networking with other DPs, it's like good to say that that's what your goal is, versus if you're like reaching out to like a producer and you're like, I want to be a DP, and that producer might not know how to guide you. The other thing I want to mention about networking, I actually co-chair this chapter in Portland called Film Fatales, which is a national organization that supports female, non-binary, and transgender directors only. And it's just been a great network for me to be a part of and to like, you know, really grow as a director, but also like see that community growth happen there. So keep an eye out for organizations like that. You know, there's Brown Girls Doc Mafia, if you're interested in documentaries. There's a bunch of, you know, there's small collectives. OMPA is another organization as well, where there's spaces to network. I think I've said enough.
And if I could add something to what Karina said that I think is really important, is when you reach out and have a plan, like Karina mentioned, we get a lot of emails, people that want to, you know, just ask questions or they want to be part of productions. And it is very important to say, hey, I'm capable of doing these roles. If you ever need help with that, here you go. Or I just shot this really cool project. If you ever have a chance, take a look here. Again, being in film school is going to give you a lot of tools, but when you reach out to someone that you want to work with or collaborate with, what we want to see is your work, is what have you created and what can you bring to a crew. So I would say that's having that plan when you reach out is pretty useful.
Awesome, thank you. That's super informative, super important. There's a question from the chat. Where do you find these groups? Are they on Facebook?
Yes, they are.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
I mean, the Portland Film Fatales, you know, our requirement is that you have to have directed a short film and desire to direct a larger project. So ideally a feature or a series of some kind. So that's kind of what the collective's about. Brown Girls Doc Mafia, that's for BIPOC, female, non-binary, and transgender, I believe. Filmmakers, I think it's any craft. It doesn't have to be directing. It's like editing, DP, all the different aspects. OMP is also on Facebook. But these also have websites too, I think all three of those. So yeah,
I'm tracking down some of my my list. Thanks, Karina.
Yeah. Thank you. That answers my question.
What are some other groups that you would recommend to young filmmakers that are trying to branch out and network?
I will say when I first moved here from New York and I didn't know anybody in the film community, there are other groups on Facebook that are more informal, like PDX Film, Castings Portland. It's like PNW Indie Film Networking. It's pretty easy to find these groups, and I can drop some names in the chat if you like. But they are very informal groups where there are job postings, where you can post your work if you like and share it with the community. And I have, through some of the posts on those sites or those pages, gotten jobs and connected with people who have then, you know, gone on to provide work or that I've collaborated with going forward. So I'll try and drop some names in the chat for you, but it's a good jumping off point, you know.
Awesome, thank you. I guess we move on to our next question. So yeah, times are weird right now. Times are tough. We've been living in this kind of plague world for almost a year now. So I guess I'm just kind of interested in how do y'all stay motivated? Because it's a hard industry to, you know, just kind of keep going and, you know, keep the wheel turning in, especially when it's very self-powered. There's a lot of self-motivation there. How do y'all keep that going?
Yeah, so I'll kind of go reverse, I guess, if that makes sense. Well, last year was definitely a challenging year. You know, I had one production that got canceled because of the lockdown, and then just couldn't get it back up because it was just it's really challenging when you're doing low budget projects to just get everybody back aligned, and COVID adds that extra layer. And I think the creative before was, you know, it required people, a lot of people. And so I just, you know, basically pivoted and was like, let's look at what other things can I do? And, you know, found a separate project that I could shoot outside, that I knew that the creative allowed for me to use, you know, minimal crew. It was just a lot more achievable. And then the wildfires happened and the city was just bogged down with smoke. And so then I had to like pivot again. I was like, all right, we just got to hang on for a few weeks. And I brought Adolfo on to shoot that. And, you know, we made it happen, but it was definitely, you know, I think the pandemic adds this extra layer of unpredictability with productions. You know, I think as you know, someone who has a producing background, I just know that there's a chance that things could get derailed because somebody gets COVID, because, you know, the weather is always an element with production. You just always like looking at that shoot outside and being like, is it going to downpour? Can this scene be a rainy one? Like, I think that there's, you know, having those kind of like backup plans in mind. But I've also just seen like this time, you know, like I said, I feel like there's these opportunities to really connect with people that aren't just Portland based. And that's been really positive for me. I've really enjoyed, you know, connecting with people out of state, and seeing where they're at and being inspired by their creative process. And I've seen that it's been a lot easier to get time from people because of where everybody's at home. So yeah, I've seen those things kind of shift.
I would say something a producer told me once is big thing you got to do in this industry is survive. And that's as harsh as it sounds, it's true. If you don't survive, then yeah, you're off to do something else. And this goes way back to when I bartended, to when I worked retail. It's survive and create. Survive and create is a lot of times, through my years, that people would tell me, oh, it's like you do too many roles, focus on one. And I go, but what if there's no work in that one role? So if I was just a DP, and in the pandemic it's really hard to get jobs as DP, then it's like I'm not going to survive. But I can edit, I can pre-produce, I can do post-production, I can color grade, and that allowed me to take other projects that allow me to survive, so that I can have funds and pay the rent and be able to be creative. So it's important that you are flexible in that way, so that whatever challenges happen is you figure it out, and stay doing what you want to do. So it's I tell people is this is a challenging career, and the challenges never stop. You never reach a point then that things get easy. This is not that kind of career. You have to really love it, because this is a night and day kind of thing. So yeah, that's my uplifting tip.
I mean, I'll go off of what Adolfo said and say that yes, it is, not an easy career, but I'm guessing that none of you are interested in this because you wanted to do something easy. And I really appreciate, Adolfo, you saying like that. I've heard the advice as well of like, oh, just focus on one thing. And I'm like, well, that's not gonna work, Mr. So-and-so. So really, like, I do encourage you, if you have, if you want to be a DP, but you do have a legitimate interest in producing or in doing post, you know, you can keep your focus on cinematography, but I very much encourage you to look into those other things as well. And I promise you that they will help inform your cinematography as well. So there is a very positive reason. There are lots of positive reasons for gaining a holistic understanding of film and the craft. And keep working at it. It is hard work. If you ever feel like, oh, this is a piece of cake, everything is getting handed to me on a silver platter, you're doing it wrong. I promise you. It is very hard work. And every single day, if you are really serious about pursuing this, you need to be doing something for your career and for your craft, even if it's something small. So let that be an encouragement to you, and especially during this time of pandemic, where we have a lot of time on our hands, some of us, or it's all getting eaten up with various Zoom calls and meetings. Just stay working hard and keep the faith. And also, as Karina said, there have been great opportunities for collaborating with people from other parts of the world. I've been working with a director based out of Brooklyn that I hadn't met when I lived in New York, who's been hiring me to produce stuff here in Portland. So, in some ways, the world has really kind of opened up, and there have been, people are seeing that there are ways of like connecting outside of just the immediate community on the things that you want to work on. So it's been tough, and it's been not, it's been difficult, but it also has really opened up a lot of interesting opportunities. And I think for any independent filmmaker who's been doing this for any amount of time, we know that we're often working within strict limitations and with limited resources and limited money and limited access. And so, throwing a pandemic on top of that, I think has deterred some, but for others, it's kind of just like another day in the life.
Totally. I don't know, Lily, you have anything to add to that?
Oh, well, I guess I'm in a really, I was going to mention this at some point. So these people you're talking to are freelancers who do the incredibly difficult thing of managing their money and time like by themselves. I never thought I was capable of that, except now that I've been working from home for 9 months. I'm like, maybe, but that's only the time aspect. That's not financial. So I also used to share an office with a freelancer. So got the idea of stability versus freedom. So I have stability. I'm working, 9 to 5 and getting a paycheck. These people have like freedom, like, but that's also, you might not know where your next money is coming from to pay your bills. So there's a huge trade-off there to be aware of. So for me, having a job that I was like able to keep last year, it's funny how there were moments where I was like, I just want to give up and do nothing. Like, why, why am I working so hard? But it was really knowing how much we were helping people like find a way to stay connected, because this industry was hit so hard, like just absolutely obliterated in so many ways. So being part of OMPA and helping people have some like sense of common, place to connect with people, and also come up with like the production protocols that have enabled people to go back to work. I read so many like government assistance things and then used my writing skills to like make it sensible to someone to read faster, So for me, it was knowing that I was helping these creative people get back to work.
You wrote the OMPA production protocols?
Oh no, they were the OMPA started a COVID-19 task force, which involved so I'm not sure who wrote them, typed them up, literally, but they are a combination of things that we heard from filmmakers, like specific department problems of makeup artists, those kind of things, as well as various unions that were coming up with those, kind of combine them all together. So there's some local resources to that, but yes, OMPA is the publisher of those protocols.
Okay, super cool. So I guess on that note, I'm gonna make a 90-degree segue here. Let's talk about inclusivity and diversity in film, because I know that's a very important topic that all of you have touched on some capacity. Marginalized voices are, it's hard to get those out there, especially in a medium that's so dominated by money primarily. So in order to keep those concepts going in your cast and your crew, what kind of stories do y'all want to tell, or what kind of stories, I guess, to also include Lee, what kind of stories are important to you to see?
Did you say Lily?
Yeah, because
oh, sorry. Okay, I'm gonna keep this brief because I would say my inclusion is that I'm a white woman, so I'm not gonna take up too much time here. But my first editorial that really got me into wanting to write was, I call my junior feminist editorial, about how school dress codes were sexist and ambiguous, and then thankfully did not have the anger and vocabulary that I got from my college courses that in like intersectional feminism. I would have probably been suspended in high school a lot if I had. So I would say that that's something I'm very passionate about through, like we talked about, picking up different areas. I did the certificate in gender, sexuality, and women's studies because it's something I'm passionate about. And it's part of my favorite work through OMPA when we get to support those kind of initiatives. So I will let others talk.
Yeah, I'm going to kind of cheat with my answer and say I'm interested in telling the same stories that everybody else is interested in telling. I just want there to be different people in front of the camera and behind the camera. That's it. It's really as simple as that.
Rad.
My go-to example on why diversity is important is, if any one of you have been to a party. When I arrived to the US and I got invited to a party, it was 3 people sitting on a couch. And in Mexico, that's not a party. If you invited Mexicans and you invited Black people and you invited your Asian friends and everyone brought their food, their music, their literature, and their films, now you have a party. So that richness you can bring into your workplace, into your school, into your movies. if you've seen the movie Parasite, if you've seen the movie, Pan's Labyrinth, if you've seen anything from Almodovar or Chan-wook Park or City of God, those movies bring stories and style that you don't see in this country or in films coming off the Hollywood system. There's something new. There's a richness to it. Speaking multiple languages really opens up, the ability to experience other cultures. The awesome thing with films is that someone put little subtitles for you to understand them too. So it's about that. It's never about a checkbox, because it's the political thing to do nowadays. Like diversity is being corporate now, but it's, why is it important? What is it going to bring to your environment? And I think it's richness, and is once you experience it, you're going to want to have more of that. Is if you watch work that, oh, the soundtrack, it's in a different language, and then you look up who that band is, then you get to experience, the richness that they're bringing through their culture and tradition. So I think it's a benefit to you to look for that diversity so that you integrate that to your work.
Oh boy, this question. I guess I think just from like a personal space, just like the stories that I'm interested in telling, I think I'm definitely on board with Ashley in that sense. I've noticed that in the projects that I've done, particularly in the last few years, that they tend to speak to, people who have, ethnic roots elsewhere and are living here in America. And to me, that's kind of a theme that I've kind of, not that I set out to purposely tell those, I think it just it's a part of me, so it drew me to it. So I think I would say, like, go towards the things that you're drawn to in yourself, and you'll start to see that there's themes that come out of that work that you do. In regards to like diversity and I think that like there's a part of me that just, I don't want white people telling brown people's stories. I've seen that before, and I really like want you to, if you're doing that story, like, please stop, I guess is what I would say. I think it's important to like there's plenty of stories about white people that you can focus on, and just keep it centered there. If you really want to tell that story, find a collaborator that really wants to work with you, and try to pay them for doing that work on that project. Because, I just think that, like, speaking to that, like, authenticity, you need that. But I also just think that, like, it's starting to become a thing where projects that are coming out, if they don't have that behind the camera, in the writing, in the production, they're getting bad reviews for that. And so I think that's something you really have to think about, like, when you're telling a story, like, whose perspective, is this story, and why am I the right person to tell that? Like, why am I the right person to be telling this story? And be responsible for that, and do your homework to make sure that you're, not trying to like represent something that you have no understanding of, because we've seen that for years now, and it's nauseating. So I think it's just important to like recognize, that history, and try to break that going forward, and realize, there are really fascinating stories within white culture as well that can still be told. But I think it's important to, like, again, those productions could also have a diverse crew. Those productions, could have a Black person behind the camera, or could have that set look like that party that Adolfo is talking about. So, those are the ways that you can diversify on those projects. But yeah, I just think that there's a balance there to really look at. And I also just think, like, this, I will say this about like this industry. I've been in it for a while, and I will say that like in the last, 4 or 5 years, there's been a lot of attention towards, getting women in roles and the higher up roles as well as BIPOC. And I think that's great. And I see that as like a change, and hopefully we can continue to like push that. But I think that like we have to think of, these issues are systemic in this industry, just like they are in all other spaces. So, as much as it's good for like there to be like a diversity initiative, it really doesn't solve the problem that there's like ingrained in the unions or in the like people who review films, or the people who give the money for the films. So those are all things that we have to continue to combat in this industry, and speak up against as we move forward.
Absolutely. That's super, super important. Yeah, I agree. So here's my hot take. Dawn Jones Redstone is going to come in at 2 flat. So how about we take like a 10-minute break, walk around, get some water, and then come back at 2:02 and finish up the rest of our questions? Awesome. Cool. I'll see you all in 9 minutes. And
my name is Dawn Jones Redstone. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a writer, director, filmmaker, and I've made predominantly shorts on the creative side, narrative shorts. And I also have a business where I do often like more doc style stuff. And then I'm hoping to make my first feature, which Ashley's producing. We haven't officially announced that yet, along with Tara Johnson Mellinger. And then Ashley line produced, and I directed and was on a writing team for a short that's going to be premiering at Portland International Film Festival that you worked on, Kai. So that's coming up, and that's exciting. To answer the question, DawnJonesRedstone.com, I should get my website in there to learn more about me. I guess, I don't know, I'm kind of curious like what the conversation has been around, because there's lots of ways, lots of areas of focus to answer that question. But obviously, like I want an industry that looks like the real world, and we have a lot to do in terms of the diversity, equity, inclusion piece. And I mean, I feel like when I see from just like social media, like young folks like getting together and putting crews, they're already like way ahead of the game. Like it doesn't look like what we see at the, top tier, large scale productions where it looks different. It's not as diverse and inclusive. And so, I mean, for me, I feel like I've always tried to, have that be part of any production that I'm on. Like my first short, Sister in the Brotherhood, 2015, kind of like my first short of note anyway. I've been making stuff prior to that. We had an all-female crew, mostly women of color, and that was like a new thing at the time. And now I see like more and more. And the thing that led me and my producer, Dr. Roberta Hunt, to do that was that if we want to tell our stories, we have to learn to tell them ourselves. And like that simple statement is the thing that like I want to everyone to be guided by, because sometimes you get waylaid and you're just like, I can't, no one wants to work, tell this story, or I'm not, whatever it is that you're trying to achieve and you feel like you're not being embraced, like just do it yourself. Just like start making stuff and do it yourself. That's my take.
Hey, Dawn. Good to see you.
Hi, Karina. I'm sure everyone said that we all know each other and see each other very frequently, so it's kind of fun to be in this format.
Yeah. So I guess what would I want to change about the film industry in Portland? So in Portland specifically, I guess like to talk about like the film industry, I think that there's a couple of different aspects. There's like the indie film, which is like the low budget, like ultra low budget indie film community. And then there's the like there's like the indie film scene that's more of like Green Room or First Cow or like Lean on Pete. It's like those are like more like $7 million budgets. So you have, and those tend to work with the unions, and that's kind of a whole system that needs overhauling. I think, you know, I've worked in a small role on those productions, on the larger ones, but to talk about the indie film one, you know, I think that like there's this, I think that there's this hard, and I'm most likely focusing on like narrative. And I think there's this like hard aspect of like, you know, you want to do your production, you want to bring on, you know, like a diverse crew, and it's like, but you're also like, you don't have money to like make your film. And so I think that there's like, we need to be like socially responsible, and really make sure that the financial aspects are in place to be able to bring on the crew that we should be bringing on. I think that there's this like aspect in our industry in general where it's just like, you know, go, 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 hustle, 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 like work for free, just get it done. And I really want to see that shift. I want to see that culture shift, and not be so just all about that like bottom line, and really try to work towards making sure that, you know, we are able to pay our crew, you know, a livable wage, so that they can work on these projects and get the experience that they need. And because I think that sometimes when we, you know, do project, and I know it's a balance of like, how do I get this project that's just a low budget thing done, but also like have that diverse crew. I think that there's like a balance there of just like trying to do your best to raise funds through a Kickstarter or doing grants, which, you know, is something that I do as well, to just try to like make sure that I can compensate people something for their time. And that also, you know, allows me to hire that diverse crew, and make sure that I'm paying those people for those roles. I think that like Portland has this bro culture. And so like, as much as I see like those pictures of like the diverse crews, I also see those pictures from like Gearhead or Kerner Camera, where I'm just like, oh, they're happy about their big setup, but it's just like all white guys. And like, I'm just like, they don't see it. Like, they don't see that that's the photo they're posting, but I see it. And I'm just like, that's kind of shitty, you know, like nobody saw that crew and said like, hey, maybe we should like, you know, like, so, I mean, I don't know, there's a part of me that's like, come on guys, like everybody else is out here being like, hey, let's make an effort. And then you see that and you're just like, nah. So I'd really like to see that change in Portland. I'd really like to see, you know, yeah, there's so many things, but I'll stop there.
I think following up on what Karina is saying is, you know, a few months ago that everyone was posting, you know, Black Lives Matter, you know, me and another local filmmaker here, we did a little exercise and we said, okay, you scroll down through their social media and let me know when you find a person of color or a Black person. And we didn't. We just scrolled and scrolled and scrolled, and that was it. It was just the Black Lives Matter, but nothing in the past. And I'm like, okay, let's check their holiday pictures. Not a single person of color, not a single Black person. And to me, that's obviously not enough. Anyone that thinks that, oh, I post things, I support this, is like, no, that's not enough. I always say we need two things: visibility and opportunity. If you want real change, you need to give that. And again, I'm not asking for charity. None of us want charity. Is we want opportunity to do the job and visibility to tell our stories. And a simple example of how this, and something that happens a lot here in Portland and in other cities, they think that bringing one PA that's a person of color or a Black person, that solves racism. Then they high five each other, literally. I've seen it. They're like, yes, we did it. And no, you did not. Now, if you hire a director like Karina, Don, if you bring Ashley as your producer, they will bring diversity and they will bring professionals. So if you want change, it has to be a leadership change. if you bring a DP that's, you know, person of color, it's an immigrant, or it's a woman, they will bring that diversity because they're connected to not just people that are diverse, but people that are professionals and that are talented. Recently, I shot a project for the city of Portland, and as soon as they reach out to me, the second thing I said to them, and they'd never met me, is like, I can bring other professionals if you want to make this a diverse crew. They said, great, send us names. And they hired 9 people that I recommended. And everyone was a professional. The shoot went great. And it was a really nice environment that everyone was supportive. So to me, that's real change. If something changes in the film industry, there's real actions that can be made.
Yeah, I would say stop hiring talented jerks or untalented jerks. But like, we've talked a lot about DEI, but I've really come to believe that you have to actually care as a person and be compassionate, you know? So yeah, we got to weed out the shitty people. And I'm sorry, you know, if that's your friend, like we got to stop being like, they're a good guy, but, and then say something that inherently makes them not a good person, you know? And I've realized this in my personal life very much with, you know, being nice versus actually being a friend, that kind of thing. So I've trying to put that in professional world too, is, talent will get you so far. And apparently people are making excuses at these top levels, you know, like we've noticed the higher budget you go, it's everyone's friend or people who work on everything together. So yeah, my dream is for people to, stop making excuses for people who don't deserve the work.
Yeah, Lily, I've learned that, oh, he's a nice guy is really a euphemism for he's an asshole, which makes 0 sense to me. So I completely agree with you. And literally just encapsulating everything that everyone has said so far, I think what I would love to see from the Portland film community is the elimination of these really intense class divides and barriers and hierarchical structures on film crews, which I believe are rooted in racism and white supremacy and that kind of ideology that this country has unfortunately been built on. That has 100% infiltrated the film industry and every industry across the board. So, you know, you're not going to see that on one of my sets. You're not going to see that on Karina's set or on Adolfo's set. But as Lily said, the higher up you go in these productions, the bigger budgets that there are, you know, these crews, these projects are beholden to studios who are placing all of these restrictions and emphases on things that are not important, super important or supportive of the community. The other thing I would like to see is, I would love to see more work in Portland in general. You know, this town is kind of sandwiched between LA and, you know, Seattle and Toronto even. And I feel like sometimes Portland is treated like the abandoned, like redheaded stepchild that like doesn't get any film work. So I would love to see, you know, a change in infrastructure in the city that can allow for that. This is not a fair comparison, but in New York, you know, if you shut down Fifth Avenue to film a, you know, chase scene with Will Smith, it doesn't shut the whole city down. The buses go another way, the taxis, you know, clog some other avenue. But here, if you shut down Fifth Ave, there just isn't anything in place to support that shoot doing that. It's just a lot more difficult. And so I think, you know, it's something to keep in your minds going forward. There are so many talented people in Portland, so many great talented people who move away. They take their creativity, they take their art elsewhere. They go to New York, they go to LA, they go to Seattle. They move out of Portland. And, you know, I think in order to keep those folks here and working, because there is just such a vibrant and eager creative community of like super talented people in this town, we have to kind of collectively pressure, you know, our policymakers or studios into bringing work here and creating those opportunities for us as well. So I would love to see that change in this town as well.
I'm very glad you mentioned that, Ashley, because I feel like a lot of our film students, they believe that they have to go to LA or New York after they graduate, that there's nothing for them here. So is there, I guess, is this your time to fight for Portland? Why did you, because you guys have worked in many different places, why here?
I'll be completely honest with you. This was not my idea. I moved here with an ex-boyfriend who was a street photographer in New York. But I ended up staying because it's just because of all the reasons that make Portland great. It's beautiful. There are incredibly talented people in this town who, unlike cities like LA and New York, which are huge and full of nice guys, it's a very different scene out here. You know, you can really connect to folks, and there are I've found, especially as like a scrappy DIY kind of punk rock filmmaker, a lot of resources available to you if you're willing to like bring your hustle game, which is like vital to survival, literal survival in a lot of other cities. And I just see the potential too for Portland to support that kind of work. So I guess that's my reason.
I guess we can go with Lily then.
I'm sorry, was there a new question?
It was why Portland?
Oh my gosh. Oh yeah. Well, mine's great then. Because I grew up in what is by locals also known as Pennsyltucky. It's the middle part of Pennsylvania, between Pittsburgh and Philly. There's a lot of well, they voted for Trump in 2017. Pennsylvania is a swing state, and I've always found it extremely frustrating. Living there, there's a lot of the like suburban housewife niceness around, you know, living in this 98% white town and pretending you don't notice. Or like, so politics was a huge part of it for me. I used to clock in at 8 a.m. at my insurance marketing job, and I freaking hated it. I had no passion for what I was doing, and I didn't like they were so obsessed with like, you were here at 8:17 and like you can be fired for that. I'm like, why does that really matter? I'm a writer, you know? So for me, it was also the work culture. I really did not like the arbitrary hustle of it. Like, I love that here people are gone at 3 p.m. on a Friday in the summer to go like camping and kayaking. I think it's so cool. That it seems like there's a way bigger focus on work-life balance here. And that can also, of course, get abused. You know, you see people in Wyden and Kennedy at 9 p.m. Working still. So, you know, be conscious of yourself still. But for me, Portland, it was absolutely the culture. Even just reading the about pages of different creative agencies, and they're like, we make cool shit. Like, you'd never see that from Pennsylvania companies. So yeah, for me, it was absolutely for the culture shift. Oh, and I did it, and I have since been shocked to find out all kinds of things about how racist Portland is, of course. So it's funny, as like, you know, to move here and be like, oh, Portland's so wonderful and like all these things, and then everyone's like, no, Portland is like have like serious history and issues. And so that's been really interesting that, you know, I got whatever marketing vision of Portland in my brief visit, and then have since come in here and learned so much more. So yeah.
My next? Who's next? Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think it's similar. It was, I lived in Dallas, Texas for way too long. And I moved there as a teenager because we had family there, not, you know, by choice. And, you know, 100-degree summers are no fun. But one huge thing for me was that I hated that my taxes were fighting people like me, fighting immigrants, fighting family that's gay, trans, fighting women. It was a state that was using, you know, my money to take rights away, and I hated that. So with this career, I got the chance to travel throughout the country, East Coast, West Coast, and I really loved the Pacific Northwest. And I saw that there was a chance to keep doing what I was doing and kind of build a community and be part of a state that, while it has many issues, it's pushing in the right direction. And compared to what happens in the South or what happens in Texas, it's a massive, massive difference.
It's so funny. I moved to Portland because my partner, he'd actually been out in Portland for like a summer and worked on a feature called Dance Party USA, and just really loved the city. And so we came out here together, and I was just like, yeah, this place, it's got Brooklyn vibes to it. And once I moved here, I had immediate culture shock because I was, living in like probably like inner southeast, and I, coming from Brooklyn, New York, where there's just like culture everywhere. I was just like, what is this? And people were smiling at me, and I was just like, why are they smiling? It was just weird. And eventually I got used to it. And then eventually I moved out to the numbers and realized, oh, hey, here's my people. And started to find that community, and that's made it a lot better. I guess, about this question, I will say that like not being from here and having moved here, I think that like there is this sort of, I've noticed this thing at the places I work, that because I worked in New York City, that it brings a lot of clout to be able to get opportunities. And so that's why there's value in doing, to try a different place to get those experiences. That said, Portland has a lot of productions here. I mean, we have TV shows here all the time. There's like at least like 2 series, I think, a year that are shooting, maybe sometimes 3, depending on if another series gets picked up. So there's, series productions, there's features, there's a couple of producers that are continuing to make feature films in Oregon and really set on doing that. They're like Neil Kopp and Anish. And they do Film Science, I think is their company name. But they, they continue to bring feature films to Portland. And so there's, there's still productions happening here. And then in the advertising space, there's a lot of work. There's, a bunch of different places that are, you can get work at. I think the hard part is, or what I've seen happen is that, you start out here and it becomes really difficult to grow because they kind of see you as like the assistant editor or like the PA, and you can't kind of make that next leap. And that's where that like networking can't stop. That's where it's like, and when you network, you transition who you are. Okay, you've been PAing for a while now. Now what's your next step? Like you need to start selling yourself as that next thing. And I think like as a daughter of an immigrant, there's like that like I don't know, like feeling that like, no, I need to earn that. Somebody needs to give that thing to me before I can say I'm that thing. And it's like, no, like imposter syndrome is real. Like, let that go. You can do this, like, and just embrace, like, you're ready for that step and like really start selling yourself as, that's the role you want to those people so that you make that leap to the new people that you're reaching out to. Because sometimes people get it in their head that they're like, oh, you're my intern, and you're like, I like stopped interning like 6 months ago. I'm ready to be a coordinator. Like, come on. So I think it's like you really have to kind of push against, how people think of you, and like really, put yourself out there to grow as the years kind of go by, and don't let yourself get stagnant in who your network is, to kind of be growing and advancing your career. I think the unions are a challenge on those TV shows. So they do have their own lever system, which, I'll stop there.
I think it's me. Yeah, people have said so many things that I wanted to like chime in on. There's lots of different directions to go. And I suppose it depends on, you know, which side you're thinking about. Again, like Karina pointed out, like if you see yourself as more like indie and maybe you have a day job, or if you're gonna like, you know, work in the unions or more in the agency side, it might look different in terms of thinking about what the pros and cons of working here in Portland. For me, like I'm older than, I've lived here a long time. I've had like 2 different careers and this is my 3rd one. And this is, so I became a filmmaker and took up film after living here for a while already. So why here? Because I live here and this is my place and my people, and I'm liking it. And the question that I find for me that comes up is, if you do want to, you know, move into making narrative feature films, can you do that in Portland? Absolutely, you can do it in Portland. What does it look like? It doesn't look the same as like being in LA or New York. It's, you know, you're more likely to be like sort of a regional filmmaker. And there's less work overall. You can stay working, but it's not the same as being in those cultural centers that we have on the coast. So it just depends on what you want your path to be and to look like. But for me, like I would be happy being here and, you know, continuing to produce work. And, you know, I find I have a way to kind of earn a living and then I have a way to increasingly to access resources to be able to make features, which doesn't always, like making films isn't how I earn a living. Like that, my shorts and the feature that I'm working on, like those things don't tend to pay so well in terms of the shorts. It's another reason to move into a feature, because it is something where you can sell a film and then that enables you to earn a living to be able to continue to make more. So again, the model can look different. There are people that work more within that union system that that's how they earn a living. But, you know, recently someone asked me, you know, we were talking about like if who wants to work on big sets, and there's pros and cons to doing that. And someone asked me if I wanted to do that. And I said, well, if I wanted to do that, I have to start as a PA, and I'm already like, it takes, like, you know, Karina was kind of talking about this, like how much slower that system is. And the skills of being a director, like, I don't feel like I would learn on set. I feel like the skills of being a director are some of these skills you can learn elsewhere in terms of like communication and collaboration and, you know, studying the art of film. But I think also part of it is just like knowing yourself and writing and thinking, like these other things that you're not going to barely be able to do if you're working like 12-hour days all the time. So it just depends on what you want to do, you know, like what, and the path that you want to carve out for yourself. Like I know people that like being on those sets, and I was in the fortunate situation of getting to shadow Deborah Granick on the set of Leave No Trace. And like, I loved being on a big set like that. Like there's just, because I'm a cinephile, because I love movies, like it was just like the best to be like standing, you know, right next to the action and like seeing what's happening and be like, oh, that's how they do that. You know, like I hadn't, and I still haven't since really been on those like gigantic sets. And so it was really, really a fun experience, and I could see the appeal. But now, you know, I'm older, I have a wife, I have a 6-year-old daughter, like that's not, I don't want to work 12-hour days like that anymore. I mean, not that I don't on the creative side, like writing, you know, waking up at 4 to write or, you know, whatever it is, but like that would pull me away from the direction I want to go at this point in my career. So it just depends on, you know, where you want to land, how I might answer that question.
Thank you so much, Dawn. Yeah, we've talked about a lot of topics today, and I think it's a lot. We have talked about unions and talked about diversity and stuff like that. Are there any, I think we're gonna open it up for audience questions now. So if you have anything to ask our panelists, you can unmute and go ahead.
I was wondering where you find inspiration for like creating new projects, like what places or things you draw from. Yeah, I guess just what are your sources of inspiration?
and any of our panelists can answer. We don't have to go round robin.
I'll start. I love this question, and I feel bad answering it because I feel very grateful and lucky to be somebody who feels just constantly inspired. I just find this world to be incredibly inspiring. We're on a freaking rock in the middle of the universe that sustains like humanity, which is a hot mess. Like it never ceases to be interesting to me. But you know, bringing it into kind of more tangible sources, I'll just list off a few. So I'm like a really big gamer. I love video games, and I find that like video game storytelling is really inspiring. I have a background in theater. I find that to be really inspiring for film. And what's more inspiring than anything else at the end of the day is getting to connect with other artists. I find that to be incredibly inspirational. When I get to talk to people like Dawn, or when I see Adolfo's work, you know, when I like am in the room with Lily and listening to all of the wisdom that she has to offer, those are things that constantly spark up ideas. You know, were you to place me alone in a room in the dark, I might come up with some interesting ideas, but it would probably be a lot tougher. You know, I think my thoughts would really turn inward, and I'd probably have like a panic attack. So, so I think that those are like the best sources of inspiration. Getting to connect with other artists is an easy place to start.
I guess there's multiple ways to answer that question as well. I'm not sure if you're talking about like from the writing perspective or just like the motivation like perspective. But I was thinking about the writing perspective and like the films that I've made and where the inspiration for those has come in the past. And I mean, I feel like it's all some version of my own life. You know, you're always like I find this idea about like answering a question, like I think that is often how the inspiration comes, that something happens or you experience something and you start thinking about it, and then I just get ideas, and then I might go and look up sources or things that it reminds me of or makes me think of, like so just, yeah, I think it comes from everywhere, but I mean, ultimately it's some version about something my mind is working through, something that happened to me or that I observed personally.
Okay, also, oh, no, go ahead, sorry. I'll ask my question after this.
I find anger and frustration very motivating. As a writer, I do a lot of like, I guess you'd say nonfiction writing, whether that's like, you know, writing an email on behalf of OMPA or doing an actual like commercial thing. But really like that desire to try and make people understand or see things your way. And this year has had a lot of, or last year, I guess, has had a lot of that, like, why don't you just see it this way? Or, you know, I just can't understand. So trying to put things into words, which is definitely like a skill, you know, to get people to understand or something. I think that's been one of my biggest driving motivators over the last year, anger and frustration, which it's a tough time to be in digital marketing and having to be on social media all the time. So I guess like Ashley, I'm constantly inspired.
I was gonna add a different, I just want to answer that question because I equally love it, because I feel like oftentimes we're talking about the industry and it's so nice to talk about the creative. So I really appreciate that question and want to talk to it so badly. I think for me, like I'm actually more of a visual person. So sometimes it's like about seeing an image. And so I tend to like kind of collect images when I see something that I like. I don't necessarily like know the story or how to make it work, but there's something about it that speaks to me. Oftentimes it ends up attaching itself to something that happened in my life or some sort of character that I've met. But I feel like this is a visual medium. So like your visuals need to pop, or I want mine to. And so like kind of starting from that place of like, what am I seeing? And like, how how can I make this visual like really soar versus just like being just a still. And so that's a place I look at a lot. Just like looking at images and collecting them. And then I find myself going back to them to like when I am working on a project and seeing like how I can work them into, you know, a documentary or a music video. So yeah, that's really been helpful for me to just have that collection to like be like, what am I responding to? What do I like? And allowing myself to like express that is so fun. It's so much freaking fun. And so yeah, so that's like, I don't know, that's just the best. So thank you for asking that.
I mean, I would say inspiration can be found in many places, and for artists especially, it's sometimes you find inspiration or things you're passionate about. Maybe you're having dinner at a restaurant back in the world where we could do that, and it's such an amazing dish that you want to know more about it. You read the news and maybe you want to write a revenge film. You know, it's if you grew up in Mexico, you love soccer and you're passionate about that. And I think it's important to ask yourself, what am I passionate about? And how can I translate that passion into an interesting story for an audience? And I think that will connect you more to the work you create and also to the work that you share. So it's finding those connections to what your passion is.
Michelle, you had a question?
Yes. So my question kind of pertains to earlier when we were talking about how oftentimes like writers will write about a perspective that isn't theirs and get it like wildly wrong, and how frustrating that can be. I want to go into writing and I'm very interested in centering most of my stories around women, but I don't necessarily always want to have my protagonists be white women because I feel like that story's been told a lot of times. So I'm kind of wondering if there's a way that I could have women of color be my protagonists in some of my scripts and still have it be in like a respectful and like correct representation. And I just kind of want to know your guys' thoughts on that.
I would love to respond to this actually. So there's a really big difference between writing the screenplay for Mulan and having 4 white screenwriters write that story than there is to having somebody write a pilot for a television show that stars a person of Asian descent, but isn't about them being Asian. But to speak to Karina's point that she made earlier, if you're gonna, you know, have a show like Big Mouth that has a character who's Black and Jewish, voiced by a white Jewish woman, and then you eventually arrive at an episode where she has to confront her Blackness, you're no longer the right person to voice that character. And also you're no longer the right person to write for that part. So, you know, keeping in mind that being a writer is not a singular position all the time. It's something that you can collaborate with others on, you know, just keeping that in mind with what it is that you're writing. I think you can write a perfectly, you know, great story that isn't necessarily about the Black experience, but that can star a Black actor, for instance. But I think once you start to get into territory where you're writing about something that, you know, as Karina said, you know nothing about, then it's really, really important that you bring on a writer who does, and, you know, bring on that person as a collaborator and as an equal collaborator too. Really, somebody who can take the reins on that dialogue.
Thank you. I feel that that's a really helpful response.
Something to add is, again, coming from my perspective of being a Mexican immigrant, is Mexican representation in film is pretty much atrocious most of the time. It's even huge shows like Breaking Bad, when they switched to Spanish, you couldn't even understand, like I couldn't understand what they were saying, and it made 0 sense. So it's, I think something Ashley mentioned is really interesting. It's, to me, when I'm thinking of a narrative story, is why write a character that's interesting and then make it something that is unexpected. And I think that could create some really interesting stories. Think of your favorite films and the roles that men were playing. Would it be interesting if women were playing it? And the answer is yes. And that would make it interesting. It would make, something different. But then when you want to be authentic, then that's when you need to search those collaborations to make it authentic, to make it real. Because I think that's when a lot of times people fall into stereotypes, fall into assumptions, and most of the time those are incorrect. So it's being conscious of the story you want to tell, and again, showing that diversity will make it richer. But if you want to make it authentic, you need to look for that authenticity from someone that can give you that.
Thank you.
I think I feel like Ashley put it really well, and so did Adolfo. I think the only thing I was thinking to add is I remember going to a filmmaker screening and hearing this story about this actor who, I think they were planning to cast for this role of a bodyguard, and then it turned out that the bodyguard was from Iran, and he had this really he wasn't the ethnicity of the character that they wanted, and they changed it. They changed the script for the actor, and I was like, that's what should happen all the time. And I think particularly in Latino culture, there's this thing that happens where oh, this is a Mexican role, but I'm gonna put a Puerto Rican in here because they're both the same, and it's no, they're not. So I think it's a thing of well, why are you trying to make that happen that way? And I feel like that's that just really just thinking about it and being conscious about those decisions, and thoughtful, and seeking out those collaborators, because there's a lot of BIPOC people out there that are creative and want in those rooms and want to work on those projects. So it's really about seeking them out.
I feel like everyone's already said things that also put it well. So but I'm just going to add something brief, which is there's a campaign going on. I can't remember where I saw it on social media. I was just looking it up. I think it's actually a Latinx campaign, but it's no stories about us without us. And I think that's just a good way to put it. That it encompasses, you need to have whoever those folks are involved, as Ashley already talked about.
And I just want to mention, for when you're not the one choosing the story, when you're being assigned things, push back if you're uncomfortable. I had an insurance marketing theme come through that was basically sexual harassment. It didn't even make sense anyways. I was like, this is messed up. This is a terrible campaign idea. We shouldn't do this. And I don't remember how I ended up having to do something along those lines. But so when you're in a position where you're being assigned things, don't be afraid to speak up. Hierarchy is a big thing that's been discussed as well. But I said this to Maddie, if we're going to have a work revolution, it's coming from the young professionals, I think, in a lot of ways, just, standing up for what you think is right. So that as well, when you're not the one choosing.
Thank you. That was all really helpful advice.
Are there any more questions from the audience?
Can I ask a question to the students? I'd be interested in knowing, is what is it that they want to do in this industry? What kind of stories they want to tell, and what stories they find inspiring, like either films or directors, etc.
Right here then, Liam Futrell. I really want to make stories about, I get my ideas from other stories. I can't think of a story. I make a story about someone who can't figure out how to do a story. And what I really want to do is direct. That's why I'm a film major. I want to direct. I'd like, not indie, I'd like to work with, big studio. Favorite director is obviously Steven Spielberg.
Yeah, I guess I can share a little bit. I'm not totally sure what I'm interested in. I'm trying to like explore as much as I can while still in school and having access to resources. But so far, I'm really interested in the visual aspect and like DPing. I'm also interested in like film criticism and reviewing as well. And I think the stories that I'm most interested in, kind of like Michelle said, I'm really interested in stories about women and
directors,
and
Lulu
wanting
Bong
to
Joon-ho,
use the privilege I have as a white woman to
and don't tell them this,
other women
but
tell their
Alberta Poon and
stories.
Don Jones Redstone are also very, very cool.
And I guess in terms of directors,
don't tell my
I feel bad because all I can think of are men right now. But like I really like
flatter the
Paul Thomas
panelists,
Anderson.
please.
I think his films have like this really interesting like
go ahead, Nolan.
Weirdness
Thank you.
in them. Like
yeah, I guess really what I'm interested in is just kind of like I forget who was talking about it in the panel,
like
but
Greta
it's kind of like
Gerwig,
surviving, just the struggle of getting work, kind of just I love the work and kind of working at it is.
But I guess in general, I like films.
Also, just whatever I can do to like elevate other people's voices is really what I'm interested in. My favorite director is Kurosawa. But my favorite like living director is Barry Jenkins.
I can go next.
I
You guys already heard that I'm interested in writing and directing and producing as well. Also keeping my options open though, because you gotta take anything with film in this market.
So I can't think.
But I like I said, I'm interested in stories about women, especially like stuff about sexual assault. Because I feel like
growing up in
for an industry where there is so much sexual assault, there's not really many stories
American and how it's different
talking about it from like
the
an actual
like the mother country,
real kind of sense, and like not in an inappropriate way. I feel like that. So I kind of want to put that perspective out there. I'm also interested in more lighthearted stuff as well, kind of whatever. Because I'm feeling like
I don't do it, who's
as
no one else
for
is gonna do it for me. So
I feel like
it's
a
so
lot of the
good to
directors
talk
I enjoy
to
haven't made very many things. I really like Ari Aster.
In our classes,
Boots Riley
you don't get
has
a
only made
chance
Sorry to Bother You, but I love
I
love
nice
that film. I really like
especially just because yesterday
kind of films
we were
like
watching
that
Crazy Rich Asians, and I was like, yes, thank you. And then other people were
make
like,
you pay attention to every second because you don't know what's going to happen.
No, it was so big for us, but
and I also like
that's the kind of
Ava
filmmaking I
DuVernay.
want to do.
I said her name right. She
speak
has some
about
really good
the
stuff.
unique experience of being
she's an amazing director,
and share that with other people.
Yeah, I'll let someone else go.
And
I'll just add, I'm a member
about
of
like
Film
7 minutes
Independent,
left.
so I get to vote
I
in
guess
the
it's
Spirit
time
Awards
for our
and starting to
panelists
send
to
out all the
just
films. There's about to be a whole bunch of films that are
promote.
directly commenting on the Me
to
Too
promote
movement.
anything
So,
that they're working on right now.
A tape, A Promising Young Woman, or two they're about to come out if they're not
And
out
we can
already.
start with
I'm
Karina.
just seeing like it's coming up.
Cool. Oh yeah, that's awesome.
Wow. Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. This has been just the nicest break for my work.
I'll talk about myself for like 35 seconds.
Really
I'm Filipino Chinese American, and a lot of the filmmaking that I want to explore is dealing with, I guess, the identity crisis of being, Asian American in America, dealing with, all of the different history around identity in that, and sort of the proximity to whiteness, which isn't very well, I guess, articulated or explored in textbooks and stuff.
And then I have a narrative short that's being submitted to film festivals, so looking to screen that. I also have a documentary short called La Tienda that Adolfo also shot. I work with Adolfo a lot. He's just the best. And that's going to be playing at PIF here soon, but it's also going to be on PBS this summer. So yeah, I've got those projects going on, and I think I'm looking to do more. I like to do both narrative and documentary, so I'm looking to continue to do both this year. You can find me on Instagram at my name, Karina Ripper, and I've got a website. It's called Fort Ripper. That's me and my partner. Really lovely meeting all of y'all. Keep in touch.
Thank you so much, Karina. Adolfo?
You should definitely check out everything Karina makes because it's pretty amazing, especially the stuff I shot for her. No, but she's awesome. Look at everyone's work. Don's and Ashley, great work too. One thing that's out that I shot right now, it's at PICA at the Portland Institute of Contemporary Arts. I collaborated with a Colombian artist, Carlos Mota. I think it's very limited, like it's a walk-in gallery, video gallery, but it's still open till February, and it's featuring immigrant queer artists, Edna Vasquez and Elday de la Cruz. And it was a really fun collaboration, interview / they talk about their art. Elday is a very talented, he draws, and Edna is an amazing singer-songwriter. It's one of the very few things that you can go out and see, which is kind of cool. They're doing it in a distance way, very limited attendance, but it was a really cool project. The whole crew was diverse, which made the talent very comfortable in telling such personal stories. That's out, and the rest is just pre-production, as I can't shoot creative projects right now. It's not risking it. So, but yeah, that's a cool project I can share.
Thank you. Ashley, go ahead.
Yes, thanks so much for having me. Thank you so much for the time. And also, if PSU ain't making room for y'all to be talking about diversity and stuff in film, like they need to change that. Just saying, like, just saying. Let's see, I guess one thing that I can share is Dawn and I worked on a short film for through Artist Repertory Theater's Mercury project, or Mercury Company project, that is going to be premiering at, wait, no, we can't talk about that, can we? Can we say that? Okay, it's gonna premiere at PIF. And so that'll be in March. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Should be great. Kai worked on it. Nate, I think, who is on this call, worked on it. And then I can't technically disclose the next big project that I'm going to work on. I've got like writing commissions for a few different things, including something that is coming up in the next couple of months that is going to be really wild and experimental and hopefully like very innovative and weird. But I feel really lucky to have made that connection. And I will say that for those of you who aren't familiar with the local theater community, we have a really like passionate and energized theater community who, because of the pandemic, have been really struggling to make the switch to producing digital content. So if you know anybody from those communities, or if you are interested in finding work and taking ownership over some original stuff, reach out to those folks, because they're looking for people like you right now. They really need help with that. That's what I'll say.
Thank you so much. Dawn?
Yeah, thanks again. Thanks for having me. I regret missing the first hour where I missed all the fabulous conversation these folks are having. And I feel like this gathering is just a representation of the special community that we have here. So it's nice to be together again. I actually already mentioned the short. I can reveal that it's going to be opening night at Portland International Film Festival, so y'all can check that out. And then I will be, sometime in between now and the summer, I will be releasing the like a fundraising video and featuring bits of a proof of concept for a feature that I want to make next summer. And yeah, my website's probably the best place to follow me, or Instagram is also my name. So thanks again for having me.
Thank you. Lily?
Hey, yes, thank you for having me. Feel free to send me any questions about just like professional life, or what's due after graduation, or how to be allowed to swear in your writing, or to be like a squeaky feminist reel in the marketing room, any of that. More than happy to talk about. I love talking to young professionals and just kind of like slashing the rules of really stuffy professional world. So yeah, I'm really excited to talk to you guys. Thank you so much. And I think you should all come to the OMPA Annual Showcase and Awards on January 28th. That's what I'm working on is we're going to have awards, new board members who I'm super excited about. Best board ever right now. So yeah, really, you guys just listen in, see work that people are working on, and hear like Karina, I think Karina, Ashley, John, and Adolfo may all be in this talking about some work they're doing as well. So yeah, just come check that out and get an idea of what everyone is doing.
All right, thank you so much to everyone. Thank you for our panelists for coming up and just sharing everything about your lives. Thank you so much. And thank you to our audience.
Thank you.
All right.
Good luck, you guys, this semester.
Yeah, get in
Our
touch.
best.
Stay in touch.
Yeah, thank you.
We will.
Thank you guys. It was
Bye.
great hearing from you.
Thank you, everyone.